morning. Well, today we're going to actually do it kind of backwards from what Renee just said. We're going to start with the fertilizer talk, and then we're going to transition and talk about drones afterwards. So let's jump right into it and confront the elephant in the room here. Fertilizer costs, where are they going to be? Actually, to be honest, I think it's a little bit better news than we've had. All in all, from what I've talked to some of the companies here, we're looking at about a 30% decrease from last year is the numbers I'm hearing. But looking at the trend here, this is the trend from 19 all the way through 23. You see, this was the peak, and we have urea, we have DAP here, and then potash at the bottom. And this is where we were, and we're on the decline now. And if we actually look at some spot prices out of Iowa, this trend's pretty close to what we see. Anhydrous is down from up, it was last year, it was above $1,000 a ton. So we're down about 30%, we're about 700 now. And again, why do we care about anhydrous? That's the building block of all the other nitrogen materials that we do use. You have to start with anhydrous to get UAN, all right? UAN are about 350 to 400, and potash is down to around that 550 to 575 range. About 30%, so it's a little bit of good news here. Okay, let's talk about priorities. They really haven't changed from last year. pH is always going to be your first priority, followed by nitrogen, sulfur, potassium, micronutrients, and of course phosphorus is at the bottom. We'll jump right in and talk about some nitrogen data. This is a test we had with the Go Bears, Acadia. This is the Plantain 615. And basically what we have here in this graph, we have a control. We have 40, 80, 120, and 160 pounds of nitrogen. Not really a big difference, nothing significant. Slight trend showing a little bit of advantage with the 120 pound rate, same with sugar, but again, not significant. Pretty typical for plantain response. We'll look at some first stubble. This is with Ben Rodrigue on the river here. Actually, the cane yield showed a pretty consistent increase with rate. But when we looked at the sugar, we see that the 120 pound rate was optimum. Why? Because as that nitrogen rate ramps up, what happens? TRS comes down. So that's actually why we changed our recommendations a number of years ago. That being said, here's the recommendations, no changes from last year. I'm not going to read all through these, you know what they are. The one thing though, I did want to say that is that all these recommendations assume a proper soil pH. And the thing that we've had on here for a number of years is that we assume an application date of April 1st to 30th. Well, we all know that a lot of fertilizer went out before that last year. And actually, one of the main reasons we were able to do that is this, nitrogen stabilizers. That's really been adopted pretty widely throughout the industry, and I think it's a really good move for a lot of folks. We're basically looking at two different nitrogen stabilizers. We're looking at urease inhibitors, which basically are slowing the reaction from urea to ammonium. The main reason we want to do that is ammonium, under the right conditions, can volatilize, so you can lose your nitrogen through volatilization. That being said, the second inhibitor we look at is a nitrification inhibitor, which slows the reaction of ammonium to nitrate. Nitrate is negatively charged, soil's negatively charged. That's why nitrate leaches so readily. So if you use both of these inhibitors, at the end of the day, you're getting more ammonium. Although it can volatilize, the other good thing is it's positively charged, so it won't leach. And then you have more urea. So in the end, you're preserving more of your nitrogen in the soil profile by using these inhibitors. Just to show you some of the results, this is a test we had with Chris Gravois this past year. We have several nitrification inhibitors. This Eclipse D material, this is a Simplot material. These two are nitrification inhibitors at different rates. Volterra is a combination of both of the materials, both the urease and nitrification inhibitor. And you can see basically all of them increased cane yield. Volterra with both of the materials jumped it up by a couple tons, but the real story is in sugar yield. Look how significant we saw. We're picking up basically 1,000 pounds of sugar by putting those inhibitors in the game here. And again, the combined material appears to be the best. Now, Blaine Buck brought this up yesterday at the Lafourche meeting. Pay attention to what you're buying. This is some of the traditional material that's been around for a long time. Make sure you're buying a good product. We did test some of the Centuro and actually the Anvil material. The results here weren't quite as good. We did see an increase, however, in cane yield with the combined materials. Unfortunately for this test, we weren't able to get sugar data due to some problems back at the lab. And as you previously saw, that's usually where we see the big differences. This test will be continued into the stubble, and we'll give you more information about that next time we talk. All right, for sulfur, we've been doing work for a number of years. This test here, we're looking at different rates going all the way up to 75 pounds in different sources, the liquid ammonium thiosulfate and the dry ammonium sulfate. And really, the bottom line here is we've been seeing this now for 3 years in a row. What we have here is 25, 50, and 75 pounds of the liquid. And then the same thing, 25, 50, and 75 pounds of the dry material. This is second stubble 615 at Laurel Valley, 75 pounds of the liquid. Look at the increase in cane yield, and then look at the whopping increase with the 50 pounds of ammonium sulfate. Even bigger increases when we look at sugar. So basically, we've been seeing this now for a number of years, and that's why we're saying you need to be putting more sulfur out than we're recommending that 24-pound rate. Now, we've been looking at some other trials for a number of years now where we're trying to determine if there's a way we can stabilize the sulfur in the soil, because when we do soil tests every year, what do you guys see too? Sulfur is always low. We're not really building any sulfur. So we were wondering if we could accomplish that by combining elemental sulfur, which is more or less a slow release sulfur source, with gypsum. Gypsum is a sulfate source. That's what your cane needs. That's what your cane can uptake and use, sulfate. But that elemental sulfur will slowly become available over the season, kind of like controlled release. So in this study, we put out 25 pounds of elemental. We had 50 pounds of elemental. Then we had gypsum at both 25 and 50 pounds. And then we split it out where we had 12.5 pounds of elemental, 12.5 pounds of gypsum, and then 25 and 25 with elemental and gypsum. And in this case, it was those higher rates, the 50 pounds of elemental, and then the 50 pounds of gypsum were giving us the best results. This is up in Morganza with Dallas Aguilon. First stubble 299. Sugar, we didn't really see a big difference. But with 615, this is some first stubble 615 up there. Again, those higher rates, the 50-pound rate of gypsum and the split rate of elemental and gypsum, giving us the best cane yield and also the best sugar yield. We repeated this test with Joey Robichaux and Harris over at Cedar Grove. Same treatment layout, and in this case, that 50-pound rate of gypsum was giving us the best cane yields, and also that split rate over here of the elemental and gypsum. This is plant cane 299, same trend with sugar. And we also had some 885 at this test, 50 pounds of elemental, and the 50-pound combined rate of elemental and gypsum really shining in this test, and the same thing with sugar yield. So put all this together, and what do we find out? We find out consistent benefits to putting out sulfur. Current recommendation may be too low. And even these studies where we're combining elemental and gypsum show an advantage to higher rates. So finally, I spoke with Kenneth and my colleague at LSU, Brendan Tabania, We will be adopting a new two-tier sulfur recommendation this year based on soil tests. And basically what it means is anything below 10 ppm or 10 milligrams of sulfur per kilogram, the recommendation will be 40 pounds. Okay, and if I do hundreds, if not thousands of samples every year, the vast majority of them are in this range. So you're going to be officially, we're going to be increasing that application recommendation up to 40 pounds where you test low. If you fall in that range from 10 to 20, it's more at the traditional level. But I think this recommendation will officially get us where we need to be. All right, let's talk about potassium. Haven't talked about that in a while. We did want to revisit potassium because we saw some research that said that we might need to increase our K rates. So we did a test where we went from 0 all the way up to 240 pounds just to see what would happen. This is some light and heavy soil 299 with the Seguras out in the Franklin area. And basically here, 0, 60, 120, 180, 240, you see the 120 rate, clearly the best rate in this case. Statistically increased cane yield and also sugar yield. Now this is the light soil test. And you see the more important thing you see is there's really no advantage to going above that 120 pound rate. And that's right where our recommendations are right now. And that's where the soil test was recommending. So that's telling me we're right where we need to be for our potassium recommendations. Now for the heavy soil, we didn't see as big an effect. Not unusual, we know that. Heavy soils don't typically need as much potassium. Same thing with sugar yields. So the bottom line is, I think we're in the right spot with potassium. Finally with boron here, we did a test with Ronnie Wagenstein in Schriever. We looked at 2 varieties. We ran the boron rates from 0 all the way up to 2 pounds. And all this was soil applied, knifed in with the nitrogen. And in this case, we had 299, didn't really see an advantage. Putting boron in cane or sugar yields, we did see an advantage with 885. With that 2 pound rate, we increased cane yield and also increased sugar yield. So the bottom line with boron is pay attention to your soil test. If it comes back and you test low in boron, there's a good chance you can get an advantage in yield. If you're not low, don't worry about it. This is just one that just fix it if it needs to be fixed, all right? All right, so basically then going over the priorities again, pH, nitrogen, sulfur. Remember, we got those new recommendations for sulfur, potash, micronutrients, and don't worry about phosphorus. For this work, I just want to acknowledge the American Sugarcane League. They supported all of it. My team, particularly Katie Richard. Some of you know I had some medical issues. I wasn't around at the end of grinding. She really took over and ran the show. Really appreciate everything she did there. Also Ellie, Brenda, Paul, and Dr. Penn's techs, Randy Richard and Dawson really helped out a lot this year too. It was a team effort for sure. And thanks to all the cooperating growers.